Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. We are in February, I think. Y'all know I tape ahead of time. Go to the Patreon Patreon/Rontowski. That is for extra Paranormal Karen episodes or tarot classes. I now have Paranormal Karen stuff to sell. I got t-shirts, mugs, beanies, all on the website, karenrontowski.com. I think that's all I have to promo. So let's jump right in. Ken Decosta is here with me from Deadair Full Spectrum YouTube broadcast that I have been lucky enough to be a guest on twice. I had such a good time, and I love that you guys do video because I don't do video, and I had to brush my hair, Ken.
It's the trappings of fame, you know.
So I have a couple of places, but I don't to go with you, and I don't even know where I want to begin because you have been in the paranormal investigation business for 48 years. You have a group, Rise Up Paranormal, that's been about 15 years, and you share this East Coast, it's just so haunted vibe, right?
Yeah, I think that I mean, there's definitely legitimate reasons for that. I mean, the earliest settlers and all that. I mean, but we're relative babies in this country. I mean, when you head over to England, you're talking about 10,000 years of history. So I guess the law of averages says that there are going to be a lot more tragedies and everything that's usually attached to a haunting. So by an accident of birth, here I am on the East Coast in the state of Rhode Island, and there's never a lack for anything to do or any kind of great stories. So it's a good place to be doing what we do.
It is, and we're going to get into some creepy stories because, like I told you, I want my podcast is very healing, and I want to get a little creepy. But there's so many things, and we want to talk about the couple that we talked about on your podcast. Amazing, but tell me, how did you get started in your paranormal journey?
Oh, for myself, I think that when I was a weird little kid. Pretty normal childhood, you know, played a lot of sports growing up. That was kind of like my number one thing. But, you know, some people do poetry, some people, you know, have hobbies. Mine had more of, you know, kind of like a paranormal bouquet to it. So I started really back in the days when I was a kid. The space program astronauts were actual heroes. Nowadays, you know, we send a launch and everybody just like, oh, that's great, ho hum. But back then it was science fiction come to life. So I was fascinated with this. And then this other thing came along called UFOs. You know, like, what are these things, you know? And the fact that adults couldn't explain them made them even more attractive to me because, you know, what are these things that are up there? And I guess that branched into doing a lot of reading when I was a kid. And then this other thing with Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster came into play. And all of these natural and unnatural mysteries just sort of appealed to me a little bit. And then ghosts, funny enough, but not so much when I was a kid, because ghosts scared the hell out of me. And I guess it's because ghosts are us, you know, and there was something just weird about that. To me, ghosts are things that showed up in the rearview mirror of your car, and it would make you drive off the road, hit a telephone pole, and who needed that aggravation, right? So,
and that's what the movies broadcast, right? Weren't the movies like that? That someone was always driving through a ghost and then veering off into the tree?
Yeah, for the most part, for whatever reason, I guess because fear sells. It was sort of like that, you know, the aliens were destroying Earth, Bigfoot was carrying people away, and then ghosts, for some reason, were just out to get us. So
that's
through
true. I never thought
through
of
a
that.
through a child's eyes, that's kind of weird. So it was one of those things where you cover your eyes and you peek through your fingers, you cover your eyes, you peek through your fingers. And I think there's still a lot of that today. even as adults, we like to be scared. But then, as I got a little older, around 18 years old, rather than read about these things and hear stories, I was able to like go and talk to people that had experiences and visit places that they say that these weird things took place in.
Yeah, so
Um,
you were right on that same course with me. You know what's funny about the peekaboo where you close your eyes? I don't even know if this is connected, but it makes me think because my dog was afraid of the vacuum and my mom's bird is afraid of the vacuum, and I thought it's because it's noisy and then it rolls over something that was there and then it's not there. Do you know what I
right.
mean? Like that's got to be scary. It was
Yeah.
there, that thing went over it, and now it's not there. That's my theory on animals and vacuums.
Yeah, I think that it's, and we were just as easily fooled as kids than the average household pet is. So,
Yes.
but then when you start taking these things a little bit more seriously in regards to having really credible witnesses that are telling you stories and they're not ghost hunting and they're not out there trying to prove or disprove anything, but then they just have this weird experience. And when you're in it long enough, you can kind of discern what's BS and what's real by
Mhm.
how a person conveys it and their body language. So I guess we've been fortunate enough to encounter a lot of people who have had these experiences that have some really compelling stories. And those are the things that really draw me, like why, how, and
Yeah.
so we're still looking for those answers.
Yes, and as much as I don't want to say paranormal investigators aren't scared. In fact, sometimes I'm scared of the ones that aren't scared. There's a couple I know that do that challenging, or they're kind of they I dance on the dark side, they threaten on the dark side, and I don't care for that. And I don't even mean like the Ghost Adventures thing. That's a TV show. But what have been some of the spookiest things that have happened to you where you really went home and were like, that wasn't okay?
Yeah, I mean, we've had our share of those. I'll say right off the bat, because, a lot of people ask this right from the jump. Have you ever encountered something demonic?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can honestly say that I don't believe so. But yet other people, they do this once a month, you know. And
Yeah.
I guess it's how, it's what they're looking for, or maybe if you want to use the term specialize in. So maybe they get more calls than we do. But, when you start delving into the history of some of the things that we've done from a personal standpoint, a lot of them don't have happy endings to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like grandma came back and, just looking over the baby and everybody goes, oh,
And left her banana bread recipe for a decade. Yes.
yeah, no, it doesn't happen. We have encountered some aggressive spirits, and I think that that's where we have to kind of draw the distinction. And the Cliff Notes version of it is really if we retain our personalities and character and memories on the other side, maybe people who were just jerks or just bad people
Mm-hmm.
carry that over. So we've encountered some of those things. And one in particular was at, of all places, a rock crystal shop here in Rhode Island. And we were downstairs, and the story goes in the 1938 hurricane, everything was wiped out in this particular spot. And there was a really aggressive entity down in the storage area in the basement. And this particular place was one of those that was built back on a location that was devastated and wiped out by the storm. So the people there were complaining about just odd feelings and things smashing to the floor. So we went down, took a look at it, and it was down there. And I'm convinced of this that we encountered someone who was quite aggressive. And so we went about our business and visited this place a multitude of times because that's when you can do a case study. It's not just one and done.
Mm-hmm.
And in one particular case, we decided to bring a medium down, and we don't really go that route because we're more documentarians and giving you tangible proof. But in this instance, we brought one down. And as she was addressing this person, I had a vacuum cleaner thrown at me.
Oh.
Now, that sounds really crazy, but this really is all on video. And at the time, in a pitch black room, I just heard this bang next to me. And I really didn't respond to it that much. I just kind of looked over my shoulder because I figured, okay, cluttered place, something fell, a board shifted. And then when we reviewed, you see this vacuum cleaner head over head over heels, spinning and slams against the board that I was standing next to.
Wow.
So yeah, that was kind of like, okay. So eventually we didn't really resolve the situation, and the place was sold and someone else moved in there, and never had a chance to ask them if anything was going on there. But it's sort of one of those things that after you review it, in the moment, you're just thinking of rational explanations and you don't get all excited. And then afterwards, when you're looking at it, you're saying, "Oh my God," And we've had a few of those instances. The most recent was at a theater in Massachusetts where, as we were leaving the room, we heard a bang and a thump, and then we see a book on a floor, and it wasn't there in previous shots and previous video we had taken of the area. So I've always found it fascinating how, in some cases, these spirits that are there can manipulate the physical environment and literally move objects to the point where, no one's in any danger or anything, but obviously they're acting out their aggression.
There's a threat, not a danger.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to confuse that with maybe a spirit's trying to get your attention.
Right.
Like, because if I wanted, hey, Karen, I'm over here. And it's like, oh, damn it. And I just throw a book at you and just to get your attention. And immediately you're going to go to, oh my God, they were trying to kill me. I was under attack. So
right, people sometimes tend to jump, but the vacuum, that is a heavy piece of something to throw. Like my rule of thumb was always the lighter things human spirits can throw. But you know what's interesting about that crystal store is, my friend Thomas Durant, and
yes.
he, I'm going to hack this story up. He would have to correct it or say it. But one time, because he goes on the dark cases, or he used to more so, not now. But they did bring someone with them, and she had all her crystals with her, and it backfired because that is like being a big ball of energy, and sometimes something can really be drawn to that. Not, not thinking it's a higher vibration. They wouldn't want it. It's just a lot of energy. So I wonder if that crystal store was a little bit its own worst enemy at that moment.
Well, the thing that I will say, and we're able to document this, is that certain ores and certain compositions of rocks, whether it's granite, quartz, things like that, we know that they can conduct energy. Stepping outside the paranormal, we know they can conduct energy because we use quartz in, wristwatches and different things as, a source of conductivity. So again, one of the things we love in the paranormal, we do love our theories. And usually a theory is another way of saying, I don't know. So if those things can be used as a conduit, until we learn better or come up with a definitive answer, then I guess it's as good as any.
Yeah.
But going into, other areas, I've been in a room in an old incredibly historic place here in Rhode Island, where I was kind of alone in the room, and then maybe 7 foot black mass starts to form in the room right in front of my eyes. And I'm standing near the door, and it's one of these old thumb latch doors. And as I'm watching this thing kind of manifest in front of me, saying, "What the hell?" I'm reaching behind me with my right hand, trying to find that latch. Just, it's like I need a safety net here. Um, but some of the stories we've heard, we have dealt with people who have moved from their houses because the activity ramped up so much. And one of the things that we're always mindful of are when children are involved in these type of things.
Yeah.
And they're having their own experiences because they're vulnerable. And something that's aggressive will certainly tend to pick on the most vulnerable
Yeah. The
of
sick
those
or
people.
the children. Yep.
Yeah, exactly right. But we have had our share of jump scares over the years, and I think the fight or flight mechanism is healthy because that's just ingrained in us. So the paranormal is no different. I know you hear people, oh, you ran from. No one's ever ran from anything.
But you can have that moment of, wait a minute.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
And I think that's entirely healthy to have that thing, to the point that I know I've had to step away from certain instances. There are 2 times in my life that I have seen a full-blown apparition. Um, and one of the things that scared the heck out of me, I was about 13 years old. I came from home from school, kind of a latchkey kid. And my job was immediately come in, feed the dog, get to my homework. So I came in and fed the dog, and I am down on one knee petting the dog, and he's having his lunch. And I watch my uncle, Fred, drive by the house, which in and of itself, not unusual. They only lived a street away. And it was not a case of mistaken identity because he had a very distinct look. He was sort of a cross between Kramer and Fred Flintstone. He had that kind of look. Oh yeah, with the hair. So he's driving by in his old Buick with the vents on the hood, black with white trim, and off he goes. He's in the driving pose with an elbow out the window and picks up his hand, waves to me. I wave back. No big deal. Go about my business. So maybe 15 minutes later, my mother gets dropped off from work, and she's obviously upset. She's in tears. She goes into the house, just walks right by me, doesn't say anything outside. So immediately, because I was that kind of kid, I'm thinking, well, what did I do?
Right.
So I worked up enough courage to go inside. I looked into the living room, and she's sitting in a chair with her head in her hands. And I'm like, oh boy. So I don't say anything, go back outside. My father gets home a little bit later, asks me if I fed the dog. Yes, everything all set, goes in the house. Maybe 15 minutes later, he comes back out and says that your mom and I are going to go to your Aunt Alice's house. Your Uncle Freddie passed away this morning. And I immediately froze. I was chilled. And this was back in the day that had I said I just saw him, I would probably get whacked on the side of the head. That was back in the day. So I was terrified of this for the longest time because I just saw him. And the weirdest thing is I saw him in his car.
Yeah.
He didn't appear to me at the foot of my bed like the usual story. So I never said anything to anyone. And I kept that story in my pocket for about 30 years. And then eventually I told my wife one day, I got a story I have to tell you. And now I kind of openly tell it from time to time. But I was just terrified. As a kid, it's like, is he coming back? Is this going to be a constant thing? Like, why me? We weren't particularly close or anything like that, but that was my jumping off point to say that there's something else going on out there. But I still look at that as probably the scariest experience I ever had, not only because it was so bizarre, but I'm looking at through the eyes of, a child, a 13-year-old.
I'm going to take a break, but I have two questions about that, and then I want to go back to the Black Mass, and then I want to talk about Cody and Satora, which is just fascinating. So everybody hang on. We'll be right back.
Many people are unaware just how much hypnotherapy can help them, or think it's only to help lose weight or quit smoking. But there is so much more hypnotherapy can do. It can help with stress, anxiety, insomnia, phobias, performance enhancement, connecting with your spirit guides and higher self. You can even discover past lives and your life between lives. Heal traumas, break habits, find your deepest truth, or just have fun discovering who you really are, all from the comfort of your home. I'm Monique Pliakis. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I want to help you. Schedule a free consult by going to www.innerstandingshypnosis.com. That's INNERSTANDINGSHYPNOSIS.com. Innerstandings Hypnosis. Find your power and ignite your inner light.
Okay, so I am going to force you into theory.
Okay.
Because I also kind of feel like it is always what makes the paranormal also interesting, because I wonder, did you ever have any more activity with your uncle, or did someone else? Because what if he was one of those cases where he didn't know he passed, and he literally was thinking he was in his car and he was driving back home, and that he's almost projecting himself? Or so were there any other signs that maybe he didn't know he was dead?
Well, unfortunately, as a kid, being terrified of the whole thing,
just stayed away.
And as I said, I just put it in my back pocket, and I never said anything to anybody about this for years and years and years. So I couldn't tell you if anybody else in my family had similar experiences. No one ever volunteered them, or we never overheard a story or something like that, because I kind of come from old European family who doesn't talk about such things, and we don't share such things. So that's hard to say. But I think that there are two elements. And again, here's my theory. I might as well have one. Everybody else has one. So there are two elements of this. And one is projection and one is perception. Because we've had instances where people have told us that, for example, they saw their grandfather in their backyard next to their work shed, and he was standing there in his army uniform, looking like he did in pictures when he was maybe 19 or 20 years old. And he had passed on in his 70s. So I think there are two elements here. As this is sent, it's how a spirit projects themselves to you. And the second part is how you sort of mentally, how your brain perceives that projection that's coming to you. And one of the things was at another location I saw, and this was the second one, a young girl, maybe 6 years old, I thought at the time, literally floating across a hallway and going into another room. Didn't acknowledge me, didn't make eye contact. I think I was just tapping into something, as we like to say, residual. We had a camera pointing in that direction, and we were beside ourselves. I said, we have this. So we reviewed the video, time-stamped it up, and what the camera showed is this really weird pulsating ball of energy. At the time, I saw the little girl just going like bong, bong. crossing in the same path in the same direction at the same height. So this is what kind of led me to think that my brain perceived what was being projected to me. The camera saw this weird energy sphere inside the house at the same time. So I think when messages are sent to us, it's a matter of how we process them, and I'm not a scientist or a psychologist or a parapsychologist, but I've had this conversation with people who are, and they were all kind of like, well, we certainly can't rule that out, which a lot of times makes these sightings a very personal experience for those who are on the receiving end of them.
Now, was that ball of energy the same size as the girl, or was it sort of, because there's, in the paranormal community, people will argue about orbs till the end of time. But I think sometimes an orb we've had orbs that reacted to commands. Was it large? Was it orb size, smaller?
It would be hard to discern, to kind of triangulate how big it was. On camera, you would look at the surrounding area and say, well, this thing is maybe 10 inches across.
Okay,
so
it
was a significant thing. So immediately, because we are who we are, we sat there and, okay, let's wait till a car comes along. Even though there's no road outside of this part of the house.
Right. You want to check the projection of light.
Yeah, we want to check off all these boxes before we go out there and say, oh my God, I saw a ghost,
Yeah.
Because that's what we do with other people when we go into their location. Of course, first thing is, try to figure out the mundane things.
Yes, I once stopped an investigation for like 30 minutes of trying to figure out what was in the picture, and it was the front of my shoe.
It happens. But this wasn't your typical dust bunny or, fly that's illuminated by, IR lighting and things like that. This was pretty bizarre. So that just gave us more questions, and this field can do that to you sometimes. It's like we don't have it figured out yet, but in that particular instance, it was a little bit of insight into the idea that a camera, and when we're talking about actual orbs, we're talking about plasma, which can be normally occurring, but this is why I get all these pictures sent to me and like, what do you think of this? And I'll say, well, it's dust.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then immediately I get into this paranormal jihad with whoever sent it. And I'm like, well, you asked me for.
Yeah. There's so many. That's the hard one. And I love ghost photography because it's so hard to get. You can really debunk almost all of them. So a real ghost photo is really quite fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we do a lot of what's called true full spectrum photography and video, where we're getting infrared and ultraviolet, which are at the opposite ends of the normal light spectrum. Just in the event that it's in those two areas that these things may exist. And that's yielded some. I would say the jury's still out on them. We've got some interesting things, but it's just to test another theory that if it's right in front of me and they're around us, well, how can we not visually see them? So now we get into the interdimensional stuff and, all of these type of things that hurt your brain.
Off camera, off tape, I would love to talk to you about particular cameras. I really like I'm sure these are video, but I really like the still photography. Going back to the Black Mass, which is probably, I don't know if that could be thrown in the demonic field, but that's getting about as bad as it can get from my experience. That Black Mass means move away. It's not a couple of, women that died in the bathtub. It's usually something a little more ominous. But this is here's where I have a lot of, so I feel like I have paranormal friends and metaphysical friends, and they all fall under woo woo. But when it comes to something bad or a really horrible haunting or even something demonic, a lot of people I know love this theory that you brought it on yourself or it's a reflection of something in you. And my theory is every once in a while you just move into a bad house.
Right.
I think there's randoms. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, here's the deal with that. And one of the things we're careful about is people, number one, when it comes to the demonic, self-diagnosing themselves based on what they've read, what they've seen on TV. I mean, if they have 3 houseflies in their, in their house,
right?
It's an infestation.
They should not be the ones to decide that. Yeah.
So they're kind of predisposed already to, what's going on with them. And a lot of times, you hear this kind of thing where somebody has just moved into a new house. And in that period of time, their kids got sick, their husband lost their job, the wife got sick. So they will immediately look at whatever the denominator is and say, nothing happened until we moved into this house. And they put aside things like the economy, pandemics, just kids going to school, which is a petri dish of sickness. And when they encounter this type of thing, a lot of times people won't look in the mirror and say, I need to lift myself up here. Instead, they'll pass that off and turn to the paranormal, which is why one of the most difficult things we do is once we establish some trust with somebody, we try not to judge, but we might get into interpersonal relationships. How are things here in the house? How are they at home? What's the dynamic? And those are difficult conversations to have because typically they'd be none of our business. But like we can help you in another way. We're not psychologists. But to me, the best possible outcome is to tell you there's nothing supernatural here. These are things that you have the remedy perhaps for them. Try this first before we get a priest in there waving holy water around, burning sage and doing everything like that. But you were asking about the black mass, and real quickly, I think it's one of a handful of cases where maybe somebody didn't mean us any harm, but it was designed to scare the hell out of us because we were in a location at a time that we weren't supposed to be. It was after hours. The place was closed up. Who are these intruders? Because one thing I do operate on is the idea that spirits have free will. Ghosts and spirits are 2 different things. Ghosts are the residual types where they walk through a wall and you're replaying time. Spirits have free will and can come in visitation or when they are requested to and come and go as they please. And that's been borne out to me more and more over the last couple of years that this is exactly what happens if you choose to remain on the other side, because there is free will involved, which is a really positive outcome, and I think a lot of times in the church we saw the sanctuary doors rattling right in front of us with no one on the other side. And again, we videotaped this. And then it wasn't a year later, we were able to have a conversation with the former pastor there who admitted to us that, I was trying to scare you off. Didn't know who you were.
Oh, interesting. It was a human.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was the former pastor who had lived in the 1800s who passed on. We had a conversation during.
Okay. I thought it was like a real guy from the.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, and we'll get into how, I know you want to touch on that in a bit, how we had this conversation. He was like, you're very welcome here, but I didn't know who you were. Yes, I was trying to scare you off.
That would make sense to me. That and also in the amount of energy it would take to rattle that. Yes, that
incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we'll just keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
It's okay.
But have you? And this is a problem in the paranormal, is when a lot of it isn't paranormal, or there's such a thin veil of evidence. You're kind of like, the best case is to leave it alone. Just keep going about your business. This isn't harmful. But once in a while, I just feel like there's one where someone was in the wrong house and then they move out because it's not getting better. And not curses. I think a lot of people believe they are cursed or the house is cursed or something. And I think that's way more rare. I'm with you on that. That's almost it's so rare that it's usually not a factor.
Yeah. I know when we do public investigations where we may go to a place like the Payne House Museum here in Rhode Island, which we've been taking the public through, and the proceeds go directly to the museum to, replace the shingles or whatever needs to be done. One of the first things I do as I gather everybody is who watches the paranormal shows. The hand will go up, and my first thing is forget everything you've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Because there's an element of entertainment on these shows, and there has to be.
They have to get a ghost, yes.
Yeah, they're trying to sell Cadillacs, golf clubs, and soap. So there has to be a level of entertainment. And in my dalliances with cable TV, I understand how that works. It's not the same as faking things, but you have to emote and try to put the viewer in your mindset. I get all of that. But I think the yin to that yin is that unfortunately people have a preconceived idea of what it is that we do, because something doesn't happen every 15 minutes.
Right.
The flaming heads don't come out of the wall. And people sometimes are disappointed. Oh, nothing's happening. And, and it's just kind of like, well, good. Then that means you won't be forming another ghost hunting team, which is exactly what the world needs here right now. Right? But we try to give everybody a realistic look at what it is that we do, and it's a process, and it's a legitimate, honest process. But unfortunately, it's like everything else. People play doctors and cops and lawyers on TV, and everything isn't neatly solved in 42 minutes. But I think we kind of blur the lines on that, and people tend to apply what they see to their own situation or to what we do. And kind of unrealistic expectations. But, I always tell people, look, you see these shows, just take them for what they're worth. They're entertainment.
Yeah. The other one is, I think I can't remember, one of the guys from TAPS International, I was at a thing with him, and he said they would spend a week in a location trying to get evidence. Sure. Yeah.
Sure. And this is edited to look like, a 24-hour thing where all of these things happened. It's kind of like if I go out and do a presentation to the library, and it's every once in a while, I'll do Rise Up's greatest hits. Okay. Because nobody wants to hear what's on the latest album. They want to hear, the oldies. Yeah. So I'll play because everybody loves evidence, right? I mean, that's, at the end of the day, it keeps them engaged. So every once in a while, I'll say, okay, these are the things we've collected over the years. And at the end of it, after 45 minutes or an hour, I try to tell everybody that you need to understand this is 15 years worth of stuff. I know it sounds like all we have to do is walk in a place and, a candle comes flying at us, or a voice comes out of the darkness, and trust me, it doesn't work that way. So I think just people have to be mindful. And I think that we're getting a little better with that as consumers of these type of shows where, I think we're getting a little better. We're not buying everything that's thrown at us.
And that is sometimes the problem with the apps that come on the phone, because there are things, anything can work. These are all transmitters or communication things. But sometimes you work with somebody that's taking everything the app says as a spirit or a ghost, and then you kind of can't, at that point, you can't actually differentiate what's real.
Because my favorite is the ghost radar.
Yes.
That's a dandy.
You know what was funny though? I think we had that when it first came out, and I was in a prison. I was in the men's prison museum in New Jersey, and we had everything go off at once. We had the whole building. The lights went out and came back on. The K2 went off and on. Like three or four things went off at once, and that thing said the word "king" with a capital K, and we
Right.
were in the cell where the warden, whose name was King, was murdered. So anything can be used, but most of it is not usable. Like 99.9% is not.
Sure.
But people
Sure.
think we got this stuff, so it's a little much.
Right, but you went about it the right way because you had various types of equipment to
Right.
corroborate with each other. And if the spirit makes its appearance, here we go. It's theory time again, kids. It affects the natural environment in a location. So that's why we set up equipment in a room, let's say that there's never been any kind of report of anything happen, and equipment in the room where everything happens to see if we can establish a baseline. Well, what is it about this room and not that room?
Yeah, does this room have an electrical wire off or something like that? You know,
yeah, or do they have slanted ceilings or tilted floors that just affects us psychologically where we don't feel right? There's so many things, and that's the thing I find fascinating about the field is not just the idea of going finding ghosts, but learning all this other stuff that I think is just it's fascinating.
Yeah. When you were talking about being a kid and not talking, there's a very interesting term called presentism, and it applies to all things where people think like women had the same rights in the 50s that they do now. Why didn't they just speak up? And you're like, no, that's because you're taking this time and putting it back there. If people want to get a real idea of what this, I kind of want to say field was before the TV shows, I think the scariest movie I ever saw was Sally Kirkland in, I think it's called A Haunting, and it happened.
Oh God! Yeah.
Yes, and how nobody believed them, and everyone thought they were crazy, and they couldn't just come out and go, "There's something in my house." But that movie, it's based on a true story. I don't know what, but to my experience, that's about as scary, or I guess mimicking real as it could get.
Yeah, it's like saying I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of what's in the dark.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So it's the unknown that. To go back to what you're saying, I mean, I absolutely subscribe to what you're saying, because a lot of times when we go back, we'll find that someone 50 years or 100 years ago had a similar story in this particular location, but we're so provincial and so arrogant that in 1890, a horse and carriage appeared, outside the house and then vanished into thin air. And we tend to think, well, what did they know back then? Because we have all this knowledge now, and it's true. We evolve as a culture, as a society. They were killing vampires here, or alleged vampires in the 1890s. And this was at a time where Major League Baseball had been formed. You could buy Coca-Cola and there were cars out on the road. But because of European superstitions, the case of Mercy Brown, 19-year-old girl who passed of tuberculosis, her body was dug up, her heart was cut out, burned on a rock, the ashes mixed with water and fed to her brother because they thought she was coming back from the grave and draining the energy out of her siblings.
Oh.
And of course, her brother Edwin, I mean, he died anyway because they called it consumption then, but we know it as tuberculosis now. So those superstitions, tend to come with us from the early settlers in Europe, along with a bunch of diseases that, killed indigenous peoples here. But
so that's not. I got to stop that. That's not going to work. Digging up and burying the heart and feeding the ashes to my sister. I got to stop that.
Yeah, it's kind of thing where they figured if someone had died And suddenly the rest of the family started dying, systematically, that it was because one of the family who had died previously was coming back and preying upon them. And this was essentially, they never used the word vampire back then. We sort of applied that later. But when they interred her body, because what happened is she died in the winter, so they kept her in an above ground crypt because the ground couldn't be dug, it was frozen. So over the course of the winter, she stayed above ground, which had essentially preserved her body. So when they finally buried her and then dug her up, a few weeks later, they found her body for someone who had passed on to be relatively pristine with blood still in her system.
Wow.
So they said, aha, there's the proof. Mercy Brown has come back because there's no signs of decay as one would expect. And this is when they did this, the unthinkable to her body post-mortem. And but this was in a small town in Rhode Island where news didn't travel. And like I say, everybody thinks these are the dark ages, but at the time that this happened, you could buy a bottle of Coca-Cola. So it wasn't ancient times, and we still embrace some of those superstitions even today.
Yep. All right, we got to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk about Cody and Satori. Satori, right?
Sure.
Oh, I can't wait.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and Prithvika is my collection of consciously created crystal and nature-forged jewelry. Prithvika translates to of the earth in Hindi, which represents the natural earth-made materials I'm working with, along with my personal ancestry and grounded energy. Each piece is created through ceremony and science and completed with being Reiki charged. I'm currently featuring copper mirror necklaces, which can be used for protection and mirror magic. My intention is for your new piece of jewelry to feel like an extension of self, to help bring your desires to fruition and to amplify the magic within you. My Instagram is @Prithvika, and my website is prithvika.com. That's PRTHVEEKA.com.
Okay, so I'm going to say it runs in the family. Tell me about your daughter and her boyfriend, Corey, and what has been happening. If people haven't, they've been on taps, correct? They've been on Ghost Hunters?
Yeah, actually, Satori is Jason Hawes' daughter.
Oh, got it. I'm sorry. Okay.
So, Satori is the daughter of Jason Hawes, who, we all know from Ghost Hunters. Cody Desbian was a young man who, going back maybe almost 10 years now, we had met and invited to be part of our group. He's very good with technology. And so we had known these people for years and years and years. And then about a year ago, we were at a Masonic lodge in Massachusetts, and it was one of those nights we're sitting around, not much happening, and then suddenly Cody says, "Hey, do you mind if we try something?" Sure, go ahead. So they came to the middle of the floor, and they sort of held hands or held each other's wrists or just made contact. And then suddenly I'm hearing the floor tapping. And you can imagine, the idiot look on my face, like, what's going on here? So the floor starts tapping, and they start communicating in the old spiritualist way. One for yes, two for no. Sounded kind of cliche to me at the time. But this thing is like, do you understand me? Tap. Yes.
Did just a question? Had they tried this before, or this was did they have a premonition, or they had done it once and they wanted to show you, or was this literally the first time it happened?
Well, funny story about that. Apparently, they had found this out a couple of years earlier, but they were hesitant to show it to me. And I said, "My God, why?" He said, "Well, because we know the way you are." And I said, "Well, what's that supposed to mean?" Thank you. I don't know if I should be. And she said, "No, I mean, you're really pragmatic, and the way you go about things, and we didn't know how you were going to respond. So I said, okay, well, I appreciate the vote of confidence, but this is something that they discovered almost or I like to say it discovered them, to be honest with you, Karen. So on this particular night, after a few of these taps, they start running through the alphabet. And they tell the spirits, if you have a message, tap, 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 tap. Okay, I'm going to spell out the alphabet. When I get to the right letter, you tap, then we'll start again, and you can send your message. So I'm listening to this, a man spell out his name. So at this point, I get up from where I was sitting. It was just me and them. And I walk right over to where they're standing, and I can hear the knocks underneath us on the floor. So I start to walk toward them, and they move away from me. And I follow the knocks, and they move away from me to the point where they did a 180-degree to the other side of where they are. And I'm like, okay, there's no mechanism or mechanical thing.
Nothing in the
I
floor.
I didn't know they were going to do this. So there was nobody these ceilings in this place are 20 feet high. It's a Masonic lodge, So there's nobody underneath them. And I'm like, what is going on? You can imagine, what the hell is this?
Because this is the golden goose of evidence.
I mean, the stories I could tell you since this happened in my presence are astonishing. So they spelled out this guy's name. They asked his date of death. We immediately went to a phone. We checked all this out. There's the guy's name. There's his date, month, day, year of his death. Spot on. So I said, I need to ask a control question. In his obituary, he was wearing kind of an old-timey fireman's outfit. So I guess at one point he's part of the fire department. There was a picture taken from a parade. So I came back in and I said, his name was actually, no joke, Rogers. So I said, Mr. Rogers, were you a policeman? 2 taps on the floor, and then he spells out the word fireman. In response to and I looked at them and I laughed and I said, it was a control question. I'm not trying to, I trust you guys, but they said, no, that's fine. We encourage that kind of stuff. And how it happened, it's kind of a romantic story. They started doing this and kind of met each other, and long story short, fell in love with each other. And one day they had and they can tell this story better than and I would love. I actually mentioned you last night at dinner. We were out with everybody at a little bit of a Christmas get together, and they were like, we'd love to talk to Karen. So,
I'd love to have them on.
Yeah. So they kind of brushed up against each other because they occasionally are on ghost hunters. If anybody wants to find them and see this process, it's out there. And they brushed up against each other, and the floor started knocking. And somebody on the crew said, hey, that's weird. Do that again. And they touched shoulders or whatever it was, and the floor starts knocking. This is how they found it out. So what they did is they took this and tried to figure it out, like how, because they didn't know who we talking to. How are we doing this? So eventually they sort of hone this down to the idea where there's communication and spell out, the amazing thing about, there is nobody in my knowledge in this universe that is capable of doing this. And I think we're so lucky that we get to bear witness to this almost when we want. Hey, Cody Satori, if you're not doing anything, if you're not filming, if you're not doing a convention, we have a case here. Okay, yep, we'll be there. And we get to see this so often.
Wow.
But the doors they open, my mom has come through. Everybody in our group has had a relative come through. giving information that there's no way these kids know about. No way. So some of the things that have happened are I've had my mind read by spirits on a couple of occasions. Here's what I mean real quick. I'm thinking about somebody that I want to contact historically at this place when this session ends and they begin a new one. But I don't mention the name of this person. I'm just thinking like, oh, when they come back, I want to ask about this person. They get back together again. The tap says, how many words? 1, 2, 3, 4. And it spells out Ken thinking about me. And I'm like, what? And then I'm thinking about a young girl, 19-year-old Louise Whipple, passed away, ill again. And this, who is this we're talking to? Spells out Louise. And I'm like, how is this possible? And they don't know, because to them, they've said, Ken, and this happened at another location, similar thing. It's, and I'm not trying to take any false credit for this because it freaks me out. But they said it's really never happened to anybody else but you. And we don't know why. That literally what you're thinking travels at the speed of thought. So again, it's like we think that we've got this revelation and we figured some things out, and here comes another question.
Well, because I'm very much more on the woo-woo side. I know you guys are really fact, but I would say, especially seeing your uncle as a kid, I would say you have very much channeling mediumship abilities, which may make your thoughts or telepathy. Sometimes I do mediumship stuff, and I wonder if it's just telepathy that I'm not actually, that I'm just picking up, and I bet that is easy for you. It really goes back to the theory of everyone has a different frequency, and then those two together create that frequency that seems to be fascinatingly able to communicate.
Yeah, I have had that said to me more times than I can remember by people who I honestly think have a gift. I think there's a lot of charlatans out there, let's just be honest. But some of those people that I believe do have some predisposure to the psychic, the ESP, you have told me it's like you have it in you. I've just always said, like, I'm good. I'll stay where I am doing what I do. So I've never really I have to hone my abilities or anything like that. To me, it's just, yeah, I guess it is what it is. So I've never gone down that path by choice.
But that it could still be there. You know what, too? I don't feel like there's as many charlatans as there are people that wish they were and are not.
Is that a variation of is that?
I always think of a charlatan as like the person that's trying to con you, a con man. And then yeah, and I always think there's a lot of people that are really hoping they're doing it and they're not.
Yeah, I understand now. But we all know, we've all seen those stories in the paper where some poor old woman was bilked out of $250,000.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that we always tell people because I've gone back to people's houses on a return visit, and all of a sudden I see they have a K2 meter and a recorder. They went out and purchased these things. And when people say, is it a good idea to investigate your own house? I say no.
I say no.
Not just because, you're going to open up a portal. Although there's some of that, because you are essentially extending an invitation now. It's like, yeah, you've been doing these things, but now I want you to just come on in and make yourself at home. So there's a little bit of that. But the other part of it is I've seen people become obsessed by it.
Yeah.
It's like you need to go out for a walk. Put down the recorder, get out of the house, beautiful day, go for a walk, live your life. So there's a couple of different reasons where I just tell people, just don't let it doesn't, I fancy myself to be a paranormal investigator, but it doesn't define who I am as a person.
Yeah. And I also think there's this, the big questions. Is there life? Is there life after? This stuff can lend itself to hoping that you get an answer to that. instead of, whether you have faith or not. It can make you, it's also like, it always surprises me when there's somebody that I have a friend that's a great psychic. And when you bring up aliens, she goes, there's no such thing as aliens. And I'm like, how can you be like, okay, I'm open to everything, but that's not how. And I'm always like, oh, okay, that's, but once you open that door, it's like the whole world can seem sometimes scary, sometimes make more sense. So, and I'm going to make a weird turn here when we talk about, Cody and Satori. And I, like I said, I'd love to have them on anytime.
Love it.
So the other day I saw on Twitter, somebody was showing this guy that had created these Bigfoot feed, and he was out fooling people. And someone wrote, I hate these scams because they make us all look bad or whatever. I do think that I don't know if that really happened, that guy really did it, but I do think there's people that like to throw us off. And this is why, everybody, Cody and Satori aren't like out there with the show. Like, do you worry about too much with them?
I do. And they're both, early 20s, mid 20s, they're grown adults. But I do, and I have to apologize for it sometimes to them. It's like, I know, listen, you have parents, but you got to understand, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. I'm protective of them in terms of this. The one thing that they've set forth is that we take no money for what we do. Because in conversations they've had with, let's call it the other side, the OS, they have been told that they think it will all go away if they co-opt it. If they could just say, oh, we can get money for it. Because I've been with people, it's like, can you get a hold of them? Tell them I will pay them. So I'm not their agent. I don't make those decisions, but I will always let them know. It's like, this person wants this, and they're like, no. If they have a haunted house and there's a problem, we have no problem going in as Rise Up and trying to figure things out. But if we're going to get there and there's going to be 40 people there with a buffet table and we're the night's entertainment, they're not into that. So good for them. God bless them. They're coming from it the right way. But yeah, I mean, can it be weaponized? Why wouldn't it? We've heard of MK Ultra. We've heard of that type of thing. And this is why they've gone from, this is our little secret, to not being afraid to put it out there to the world, be it on the Ghost Hunter show or on, their own show on our YouTube network, right? Or just putting it out there. They don't perform any of this on their show. The kids are they're adorable. They're hysterical. They're like an old married couple, and you have to see it. And they have a haunted museum of oddities and haunted objects and things like that. And they put a lot of their time in that. So they've made themselves public, almost like to protect themselves. It's like, we're not clandestine about it. We're putting it out there. Yes, it's like, yeah, here's who we are and this is what we do, which I think is a good idea on their part. But with this type of ability can be compromised really quickly, without getting into the darker elements of it. I think everybody can use their imagination, like, ooh, what would we like to know, Right now they feel, and again, I'm speaking for them, but what they feel is that everyone whose path we cross, we were supposed to cross their path. And there's a reason for it. So we're going to take what we do to try to help these people. And they've chosen the right path, in my mind. For us, I know I get the recall, oh, you're Cody and Satori. So in my own little way, they think it's funny, but they appreciate it. I'm always giving them some OG advice, whether they want it or not. I could give a damn. I'm gonna this is what I feel. But it's all out of love for these kids and what they do, and just to let them know, first and foremost, that as far as our group, we don't want anything from them, and you guys do whatever you're comfortable doing. And that's how we approach it.
I love it. And I kind of talk about everything happening as it should. I think we're falling out of like celebrity worship, which is a really good thing. That it does sound like they, this is really, my heart is already like, I like these two, that they're not ready to, put it all out there in that way. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, we were, like I said, we had a little small Christmas gathering at a local place, and we've had them over for dinner where they come over and hang out, and we don't even talk about the paranormal.
Oh, that's great.
Because there's enough of that out there. I mean, because they get a lot of it at when are you going to be on Ghost Hunters again? And I mean they're so kind and generous with their time, but there comes a time that I want to talk about baseball or something,
Yes.
anything.
But with that, I still am going to reach out to my friends there on the East Coast and try and book some gigs so that I can just hang out and investigate with you guys sometime. Because I just...
I said this to you before, Karen. You are always welcome. If you ever have a gig somewhere in the state, you just call me up and let me know.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time today, Ken. This was fantastic and fascinating. And I would like to talk to everybody too, that from that show. I still got to reach out to Kitsy. But I would love to talk to your partner and have everybody on if they have the time. That would be fantastic.
Well, we love you, Karen. You know that, and you're always welcome. You always have a place with us, and I'm honored that you've asked me today. And I'm still going to send you some of those video clips that we talked about last time we were on the show, so you can get an idea of exactly with these two young people what it is that we're seeing. And anytime that it works for you, then I'd be more than happy to connect you guys.
Fantastic. I would love to do that, especially for the new year. This is coming out in February, but I'd love to talk to them as soon as we get into the new year. And also, I would love a text message. And then if anybody else would like a recommendation of cameras, I'm having an awful hard time sifting through what's junk and what's good.
Oh, sure. We get a lot of that, what's the best recorder, camera, things like, I mean, I can give you my experience and why, but absolutely, whatever I can help you with.
All right. So everybody can find you at Deadair. This is on Sundays, right? The live Deadair full spectrum?
The Full Spectrum channel is pretty wide array of stuff. Sundays is Deadair. George Lopez and myself host a talk show. Mondays is Monday Night Monsters. Chris Rondine and Rob Murphy talk about some of the monsters and legends and where they come from, whether it's Dracula, the Wolfman, and the reality behind them. And alternating on Thursdays, we have Cody and Satori live from their haunted museum. And then every other week, Panoramic Perspectives with Carl Johnson, Elise Jamarco Carlson. They have guests on and a wider range of topics. And I have my own little thing, shameless plug, called Extremely Strange. And I just tell weird stories.
I love it. All right, Ken, thank you so much. Everybody, thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. Folks, we will see you next week. Join the Patreon or the website or just enjoy the show. Everybody have a great day. Paranormal Cat.